Hello, all, and welcome back to a new episode of TV and Us, a conversation show about the TV series we just can't stop talking about. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And each season, we focus on a different show, reviewing it episode by episode, and we invite you to watch along with us. Right now, we are reviewing Severance Season 2, and today we are on Episode 10, the season finale, titled Cold Harbor. Sarah, kick us off with a summary for Cold Harbor.
Mark forms a shaky alliance in an all-or-nothing play, while the team makes a dangerous last stand.
Oh, that's a great one. That's a great one. And also you're like, Mark, which Mark? Because there's
exactly
many Marks.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That was great. So in TV and Us tradition, we're going to share our episode titles for episode 10, this finale. Sarah, what is yours?
Mine is Goodly Splendors Await.
Yes, a Milchek moment.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. A Milchekism.
Had to include it.
Mm-hmm. My episode title is The Windmills of Your Mind.
Indeed. And we are tilting at many a windmill of the mind in this episode.
Yeah, we are. We are. My gosh, there's so much to discuss. Before we dive into the spoiler territory, we're going to give our high-level thoughts about this finale, and then we're diving right in because there's so much to discuss. So, Sarah, how did you feel about this Severance Season 2 finale?
Yeah, this episode is pretty bonkers. There's so much that happens in this one episode. And it's one of those episodes where they put their foot on the gas and kind of don't let up at all. Like, I don't know that there's really ever a chance to kind of catch your breath in this episode. And things just get weirder and wilder the more that it goes on. I think in keeping with every other episode of Severance, there are some questions that get answered, and in the process, you also develop, I don't know, a million other questions to be asked. And so now we just have to sit with those questions for however long it takes before a season 3 emerges. So yeah, this season definitely ends with a bang. It is bonkers. It is, I think, unlike anything we've seen so far in Severance. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's a wild one.
That's for sure. I love that it feels like the season has given us a lot, but also held back a lot so that I could fully unleash in this season finale, which is so fitting and so Severance to do. In all of the ways that I was deeply unsatisfied with the season 1 finale, I'm happy to report that the season 2 finale satiated me fully and completely. And there's more questions, of course, but I feel so happy and content with the season finale. Particularly, I think there's a lot of grand reveals that happen in the world of Lumen and the Severance larger world. But also, I think more importantly, there's some really big, meaty, emotional character moments that feel so significant and really packed a punch. And in a lot of ways, this season has been building all of those emotional stakes, and it got to cash it in this season finale. So I was so pleased by that because that's what I wanted. This is the season finale that I wanted, and so I'm happy as a clam.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I was curious because we've definitely been in this interesting pattern of like every other episode really works for you. And so I was curious to see, were we going to end on a high or were we going to end on a low for this season?
Oh, we ended on a high. I'm so happy. I'm so satiated. There's so much meat here, and we're going to get to talk about it. So this is your spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the season finale of Severance Season 2, we're diving right in, and the internet has dove fully in as well. So good luck to you on trying to avoid all the spoilers. But we also want to make sure that you get to have a full holistic experience because I think this is one that's so worth it. So, all right, we're diving right in. What is the biggest oh my gosh moment of this episode that was a series of oh my goshes, one after the other? What stands out to you?
Okay, so I don't know that this is an oh my gosh moment, but the thing that I found really interesting about this episode is the change in color palette yet again. I feel like in season 1, we kind of only had 2 color palettes, and that was inside of Lumen, very bright, and then outside of Lumen, very dark. And in this season, in the second season, we've been able to see so many other versions of this world. We got to see the flashback episode with Mark and Gemma that looks like nothing else that we've seen. We get the Harmony episode that, again, looks like nothing else we've ever seen. And then in episode 10, we see something new also. And I really appreciate the use of red in this episode, and I love that it starts from the very beginning. And in that conversation between Innie Mark and Outie Mark, and Outie Mark is like blues and blacks and colors that we're used to seeing in the show, and Innie Mark is like reds and oranges and things like that, these colors that we haven't seen much of yet in Severance. And then throughout the episode, as we see Mark, interacting with this world, and as obviously murdering Drummond, all the blood, the red lights flashing, you see these introductions of red as we go along. And it's this just jarring moment because we haven't seen this bright red yet in this show. And I thought that that was just so interesting to set that up all the way at the beginning and using color to kind of show which side of Mark is winning, really, and who is in charge in this moment. And Innie Mark, in all of the red lighting, running through Lumen with Helly as a final like F you to Outie Mark, just going to run off into the sunset, into the innermost parts of Lumen with Helly in this red background. I just thought was really, really interesting. And then all of the credits for Severance have red in it too. And so I found that so fascinating. And that's one thing that was like really memorable to me because it was just so jarring and unlike anything we had seen up to this point.
I love your point around color because even within the episode, the color intensifies as the episode is unfolding. And there's more saturation, there's more red, there's more lighting that is being activated as danger and the stakes are all rising as characters are making decisions. So I think that the narrative arc and journey that the color goes on, even within this one episode, is also really fascinating as tension rises over the course of this hour and 20-minute experience. So yeah, the change in color palette, it's quite notable. That's a great observation.
It's so jarring. And
Yeah.
I also love just the way that this episode is playing with light and dark as well, because when you see Mark and Helly first kind of walking through the hallways, it's dark except for, the automatic lights turning on, but it's a little bit off of their pace of walking, which is also interesting. And then we see Milchek with his little clicker and is able to turn on all the lights. And then even during like the marching band performance, the lights are doing all of these really interesting things. So I think that this episode is having so much fun with color and showing us different lighting, different visuals than we've seen before. And it's even more fascinating in the context of the Lumen offices, which are so sterile and stark and white. Not
Mm-hmm.
anymore.
It feels like characters become drenched in that color as those alarms are going off, and they need to move. They need to move to their next move. The other moment where I feel like that color really is so stark is the fight scene with Goat Lady, Drummond, and Mark. I thought that scene was so fascinating when the blood starts to splatter across these incredibly white, clean, crisp, sterile walls. It feels really significant. That scene in general, I found so interesting in its placement in the show all up because we've seen some little like crumbs of violence or things that are a little bit gory. There's a lot of shots that come to mind of the Severance procedure, and they'll just show like a drill going into a head, which is really great for my really queasy self. But I thought that the intensity and aggression of the fight scene between Mark Drummond and the Goat Lady was particularly notable and feels like it struck a different chord than Severance as a show all up has ever really leaned into. And it allows that scene to stay in that tone for much longer than I expected. And just the sheer violence and outpouring of emotion that we see from all three of the characters was so notable. So I thought that was really fascinating, and especially given the power dynamic between Drummond versus the Goat Woman and Mark, there's a lot like there's a lot of meaning behind the way that scene unfolds.
And the introduction of the red and the blood, I think to your point, it's made to seem so much like more horrible because we haven't seen anything like this before. So it was almost giving me like the Shining vibes and the elevator that like is gushing out blood. Like it's obviously not that graphic, but it's in that vein. And even the way that some of the scenes are shot, like it was giving me like old school horror movie vibes, but done in this really elegant way. And I thought that was really interesting to see how much this episode is playing with so many different themes and filmmaking styles that we haven't had a chance to see in Severance, and then it's all unleashed in this one episode.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved I think what's really what packs a punch about those scenes is the amount of restraint that Severance has had up until this point so that those scenes carry weight and feel incredibly shocking as these characters are making emotionally shocking choices. And so that parallel and the amount of restraint that the show has had to ensure that these moments would hit as hard as they do, I think is particularly impressive. Because we, as viewers and consumers of media, have seen tons of violence all the time on screen, but not in this world, not in this context, not over the course of 2 seasons. So when it comes with such huge succession and in this big weighty moment, I think it really packs a punch.
Oh, it's so jarring. And then
Yep.
I think the other piece of it is that we've seen both Innie and Outie Mark, like, they're pretty tame. He's a pretty even-keeled guy. He's just kind of mild-mannered a lot of the time. Obviously, he's been pushed to a breaking point by this time and is under a lot of stress and is making hard decisions. But for the most part, Mark is a chill dude. I don't know that Mark has ever been in a fight before. Like, he's that kind of guy. And in this episode, we see Drummond wailing on him, and Mark has
Yeah.
no idea how to respond. And then going down to rescue Gemma, and Outie Mark accidentally kills Drummond. And so it's just, this character, and he is not this type of person. Like, he does not walk into confrontation. He probably tries to avoid confrontation as much as possible. And he is in this incredibly violent moment, both parts of him, and neither one seems to know how to respond. And I think because we know Mark so well, I think that also helps make the violence seem all the more jarring. Like, this is not a John Wick situation. Mark is not prepared for this. He does not know what to do in a fight. And yet, that is where he finds himself. And so we are just as shocked as he is.
Yeah. Dude, I loved the accidental Drummond death.
Oh my gosh.
It was it's not supposed to be funny, but
No,
I was laughing.
it's hilarious.
It's a really great way for Severance as a show to reward us as viewers that have agonized over how this world works for so long to give us just another little moment of like, no, but logistically, there are some things that you just don't consider and have not thought about for how the transition between your severed selves work and what the implications are and all the far-reaching impacts of it. Like, you wouldn't have thought that as you go through this transition in the elevator from one half to the other that your finger would accidentally slip and you pull the trigger. I just love the way that, like, for an audience base that has already thought so much about, like, what it all means to be severed and all of the, like, world rules and details, there's just some things that you're like, "Oh, I didn't think of that scenario. You know what? That's a good one." I was reading online that they actually, during the writing process, threw that out as a joke of, like, wouldn't it be funny if Outie Mark accidentally, as he's going through the transition, accidentally shot Drummond, and they collectively were like, "That's going in there. That's hilarious. That's genius. Let's put it in." So I loved that that moment started out as just a blasé little joke from one of the writers, and it made it in. It's great.
I love that so much. And it absolutely works too. And then I also loved the detail of Drummond halfway being in the elevator, so
Yeah.
you just see the doors keep trying to close and it can't. And it's just that little detail I thought was actually really, really smart too. And it was just such an interesting visual on top of seeing Mark just covered in blood and unsure what to do because he's probably never experienced that much blood before in his life.
Mhm. Yep. Yep, he's drenched in it, and then he goes to meet his wife that he's been separated from the past 2 years while drenched in blood with his hand
Mhm.
outstretched saying, Come with me. Come with me." And I don't know if I would be so calm to respond to a bloody stranger inviting me to come along with him, but I think that scene is significant because it essentially shows that the barriers of the severed mind are not actually as strong as they thought, because she recognizes him and is willing to go with him and ignore her obedience to the loudspeaker and the voice over the loudspeaker from Lumen. So the severance barrier ain't that strong. They found a way to penetrate it.
That was another moment that I thought was really funny, and I definitely laughed,
Yeah.
just because it's so ridiculous, you don't know why you're here, you're taking apart a crib for some reason, and then this random stranger comes in, drenched in blood, saying, "I'm your husband." Like, what? This is so ridiculous. But you know what? She went with him. It's chill. It's fine.
Yep. She went with him. And I think it's great that the the barrier wasn't fully pierced through at that moment. I think I think that that leaves a lot of open questions for what she was thinking and how much she recognized or didn't recognize. Maybe it wasn't a binary like, "Oh my gosh, you're my husband." They don't have that moment until after they're outside of the room when she is truly outie Gemma. But there's some inkling, there's, like, that feeling or that intuition of, like, "No, I think he's telling the truth." And that is what was able to penetrate the barrier. So I just appreciate that it wasn't like floodgates are open and your whole other side of your memories fully come rushing in the moment you see something from your past, or I guess from the other side of your brain. I like that it's more subtle than that, and it's more nuanced and more detailed. It's that, like, gut feeling of, like, I think there's something here. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm willing to even just go along with this bloodied man. And that was enough. That little intuition and kind of sixth sense that she had to say, like, no, actually he might really be telling the truth. I just like that it wasn't a full reunion that happens inside of the room.
Yeah, I think I read it maybe slightly differently
But
than you. I think it was more of just, like, curiosity, like, and like, "Oh, this is weird, what's going on, but he seems to have a way out of this room, so I guess we'll do this?" Like,
mm,
I think I read it it's along the same vein, but I don't know how much of that veil was actually pierced there.
mhm.
I think it may have been more curiosity than actual recognition. But to your point, I love that the show leaves it there, We can think kind of whatever we want about that particular interaction and what we think actually was going on in Gemma's head, because there's multiple readings there that could all work.
Yeah, yeah, and I love the ambiguity of it because it's gonna give all of us as viewers and the interwebs and all of the forums and threads just so much to chew on, which is always so fun.
Yeah, there's never a shortage of that in Severance.
Yep, yep. Other big things that happen, the whole ending. Any Mark chooses Helly. I thought the way that that scene was staged was genius. That one hallway in the corner of Lumen where you have essentially your two selves, your two lives on either side of you, and they're both, one's begging, one's desperately wanting you to come with her. The other one's kind of waiting there, hoping you'll choose her, knowing that she will probably die and no longer exist if you don't choose her. There's so much that's genius about the way that visually looks and the way it's paced, how long Mark spends just agonizing over his decision while he sees Gemma behind the window and we can't hear her. It's all so well done. Ripped my heart out. Absolutely. The waterworks were flowing. And I think it's so fascinating that any Mark chooses Helly. I love it. I'm here for it because I think the beginning of the episode and seeing the way that Audi Mark comes with such self-focus and condescension with his innie tease us up to actually be rooting for Any Mark a little bit more than we might have been. See, after having just seen this beautiful reunion between Audi Mark and Gemma just moments before. It's just a whole emotional roller coaster. But I think the show did a great job setting up that you kind of can see both sides of Mark and empathize with both sides. There's not actually one that you're rooting for more than the other. And that balance for me and that inner tension for me was great. I was severed in my feelings about this.
Nice. I love it. Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I love that the show makes that choice, and for me, this episode is the most interesting that I have found Mark to be.
Mm.
For like 2 whole seasons, I've been like, why is it this guy? Why are we following him? And I think this episode, that tension within him and that push and pull between his innie and his outie that is fascinating to me. And I love in the beginning that exploration where he is talking to himself and having an argument with himself too. And honestly, both of them suck. I was watching this and I was just going,
Yeah.
you both suck. Like, work it out amongst yourself. But I think that decision by Mark to choose Helly was really, really interesting. And I think, because had he gone with Gemma, I still don't know where they're going to go in season 3, but I think there's less to work with had he chosen Gemma at the end. But him choosing to stay and choosing Helly, I think sets up some really interesting things for season 3 that they could potentially do there. And that inner conflict with Mark, I think, is also really fascinating to potentially explore. My big thing, though, is like, I just want Gemma to be safe. Like, I know that we have gotten her out of Lumen, like out of the severed floor, but she's not out of Lumen yet. Like, does she know how to escape? Like, can we just get her to a safe location? That is all that I cared about. So I was like, that's cool, Mark, that you want to go hang with Helly, but like, can we just make sure this woman is safe? She's just been tortured for years. Like, can we just make sure she's okay? But the show was not going to give us that, so I was upset. But, that's to be expected.
Yeah. I was hoping, this is where my mind wandered to, if we are hopefully going to get a lot more of Gemma in season 3. and they almost have traded places. Like previously, Gemma was taken prisoner by Lumen, and the whole goal is like, let's get Gemma out. But now they've traded places. Like, will we get to see Gemma team up with Devin and Cobell and have to like figure out all of that as she begins to navigate what life outside looks like and process everything and all of that? There's something interesting there in the fact that their literal spots have completely flipped and reversed between the two of them, which I think will be really fun to see.
Oh, yes. Please, more Gemma. She's
Right?
awesome.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, that'd
Yeah.
be great. Especially like her and Devin, a team up there. I'm here for it. Let's freaking go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I love that we get at the beginning of the episode this seeming like apology from Outie Mark to Any Mark, and just the way that that whole conversation devolves, I think is genius, because we can see how Outie Mark maybe is using that a little bit strategically or trying to manipulate and control his innie to get what he wants, and his patience waned so quickly, and he truly does not see his innie as a real human being with emotions. He clearly has a power dynamic that he is wielding with his innie. And it's such a great contrast to Dylan and the way that Outie Dylan relates to Any Dylan and that whole little letter that he writes. I appreciate that, like, it's not this warm, fuzzy moment of like, I know you're a real human being and whatnot. There's still a power dynamic that Outie Dylan feels, but there's a little bit more respect and acknowledgement of the autonomy and the emotions of Any Dylan in his letter. And so just the juxtaposition and the contrast of the way that this Outie and Any relationship has unfolded between Mark versus Dylan, I think is really interesting too. I found that there's just kind of two sides of the spectrum that are almost depicted in the episode.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty fascinating because this is I think the third time now that we've seen like an Innie and an Outie kind of communicating with each other. In the first season when Helly is trying to escape, and what we have learned in the second season is that Helena kept like forcing her to come back in. And then we see obviously Outie Dylan and Innie Dylan. And I loved that conversation, or that, I mean, it wasn't even a conversation. Dylan reading his note to himself. And the whole like Gretchen piece of it makes that all the more fascinating as well. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I really was wondering what Dylan was going to do, because it seemed like he could have gone either way. And he could have been like, nope, I am out of here. Or, yeah, I'm staying. But I think all the noise and all of the commotion just made him curious. And so he had to pitch in and get involved. And once again, Dylan G is a freaking hero and saves the day in the season finale again, because he took one for the team in season 1. And then without him in season 2, it would have all gotten blown up. So once again, Dylan G is a freaking hero. And I think that should be acknowledged.
He really does come through, and I love that he's kind of this understated character. He goes on a whole trajectory, but on the whole, even within the episode, he is a supporting role, but hugely vital in the ways that I think are often overlooked. Like it's obviously very much Mark's story, and he is the protagonist, but I think that there's still so much to Dylan's character that I'm hoping season 3 continues to tease out, especially after that very sentimental letter that Outie Dylan writes to him, and kind of this affirmation for Any Dylan of some of the traits that he has. I think it's so interesting that Any Dylan receives this letter from Outie Dylan that says, I hope one day she sees in me what she sees in you, a self-assured badass. And it's after that he almost feels this conviction and this self-assuredness to go and help and be an agent of change in the Lumen Severed Floor. And so there's it's going to be interesting the way that just like Outie Dylan's choices affect any Dylan, and then therefore any Dylan is able to help the team or further the plot in some interesting way or play a critical role. And just kind of the ripple effects of all of that and how dependent those storylines are together, I think is really fun.
Yes. Yes. Dylan, we believe in you. You are a badass. Please keep doing amazing things.
And I think what's also interesting about the Dylans is that I don't know how I feel about either of them and what I want to see for either of them. You know, like the way that it has ended within this season finale for where it's left off for the two of them, I'm like, it's so, it could go in so many directions next, and there's not a clear like I want Outie Dylan to keep any Dylan in there. Like, I'm like, I don't know if I want that for you, any Dylan, but also like you get to survive. So that's great. And so just the like lack of clarity in how we should feel and all of the ambiguity in that, I think is also really interesting too. And it really is related to like the choice that any Mark makes, which is like, what's your survival plan for the innies? Like, if we're going to root for the innies, like, what does success look like for them? What are they aiming for? What's their goal? You know, like just to find a corner of the lumen floor to like live for as long as they can for the time that they have. Like what do they now want now that they have the ability and freedom to desire for and work towards a new life, a new existence together? Like there's all those questions that I think are unanswered, and we don't know, the characters don't know, and I'm sure the show knows where they're going next, but I think that's really fun too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's setting up some interesting and some messy things to explore in season 3. You know, I keep thinking back to, oh, I don't remember which episode it was, but in the behind the scenes where the creator was kind of talking about how each season will focus on like the innies in a different stage of life, and season 2 is the adolescent years, and you see all of them exploring this world, exploring their sense of agency and their ability to make choices and push boundaries and all of these things that happen in adolescence. And you see the way that that has kind of blown up the world a little bit, which I feel like happens to all of us when we're in that kind of stage. Like everything that we knew has changed. And so I think that's also setting up some really interesting things for season 3 to potentially explore as they explore more of what it means to be human, and like them actually able to make decisions instead of just mindlessly typing at a computer. What does it mean to actually want something and go after that thing? Like there's a lot of interesting pieces there. I don't know how that's going to work in the show though, because like what is Lumen gonna do? Because at the end of season 1, these severed workers go out into the world, and okay, that's a thing that they were able to kind of like clean up and gloss over. This season finale, though, is way bigger than, you know, the macro data uprising and the overtime contingency. Like, we had a man murdered on the severed floor. We had a test subject escape. We have just workers running willy-nilly throughout the building. Like, there's a lot here that I'm like, I don't understand how Lumen would be able to clean this up in such a way that the severed workers would continue to be able to live. You know, like, I don't know. If I'm Lumen, I'm just shutting everything down. But I'm so curious what a season 3 could look like, because it, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me, like, where we're going next, because where can we go next? But that's why I'm not a writer of Severance.
And where will we pick up too? You
Yeah.
know, is it moments after? Is it going to be 6 months later as the new status quo is ushered in? I think that will be really fun to see too, of how they explain it. They did they did a version of it for the start of season 2. Like this is a couple weeks later, and there's all this PR that was covered of how they tried to like manage the public's narrative about what happened with the MDR uprising, all that stuff. So it'll be fascinating to see. Yeah. What will Lumen do now? What will Milchek do? Can we talk about Milchek? If
Oh,
there's one thing that I wished there was more of, which I know there was like not enough room in this episode slash, I think the show was maybe going in different directions too, but I just want more Milchek. He was at such an interesting, it felt like crossroads, and I just hope we get more character moments and growth and big choices that come from Milchek in season 3, because he's so interesting and we just love him. We're the biggest Milchek filled fans ever over here on TV.
oh my gosh. Yes. And like, just once again, Tremel Tillman, freaking incredible. He has such a charisma about him. And there's just something so likable and endearing. And I loved this episode. It was so freaking weird because you see this other side of Milchek, and he is dancing and laughing and leading the band and just living his best life in this. And that was just so interesting to see. We've seen moments of levity and joy from him kind of throughout these 2 seasons, but for the most part, he has been professional and he has been on, and he has had to be the manager guy in his role. And that's it. And I love that in this episode, we see him just throw caution to the wind and have a great time. And I loved that we first see him with Dylan, and he leaves Dylan to process through the letter, and he runs away because he wanted to be there to do his whole little show. The show was more important than Dylan. And so I love that we see his priorities there. We see how like into this he gets. I don't know, man. I freaking love Milchek. He's my favorite. He shouldn't be my favorite, but he is. And we got to see a different side of him. And it does make me curious though, because like he has been in a tough spot this entire season. And now things are significantly worse. Like, yeah, Mark finished Cold Harbor, but also Drummond was murdered, Mark and Helly are on the run, and Gemma has escaped. That's not great for our guy. And so I'm a little nervous for him.
Yeah. And also in the previous episode, the person that he deeply offended and like stood up to, Drummond, who theoretically would be the person that would be the orchestrator of his wrath upon Milchek, and kind of putting Milchek at this crossroads to maybe choose to rebel or be forced to rebel now and go join the Rebel Alliance. That person is no longer alive anymore. So the opportunity to actually still stay loyal and faithful and a good employee with Lumen still exists as a valid pathway for him, which previously, like after episode 9, I believe it was, I was like, yo, Milchek's time here is done, like he's got to figure out something next. But that person's dead. So now there's a whole new pathway that previously might not have been viable that is now reviable all over again. And I think that's really fun too. I was hoping that Milchek would have to figure something else out as Lumen banishes him and fires him and whatnot, but he might still be Team Lumen, and what will that look like for him as he continues to yield and give so much of himself to this company that doesn't care about him, and he's having to mold himself to become someone that he's not for it. But he also could just also totally like leave and join the others. So I just love that the landscape for possibility for him is still so wide of what he'll do next.
Oh, Milchek, just leave. Like, we can find a place for you where you can be as verbose as you want. You can dance. You can, I don't know, choreograph marching band shows. Like, whatever your heart desires, we can find a space for you, my guy. You do not need to be stuck here at freaking Lumen. Like, I just
Mhm.
I just wanna take him out of there and just be like, "Okay, what do you wanna do with your life, Milchek? Let's make that happen for you because you're better than Lumen."
Yeah, yeah, but here he is, you know?
Yeah, we'll see.
Here he is, still giving
We'll see.
more over. Other big reveals, Cobell shares with Mark that about what Cold Harbor is. So I think it's actually on par with what a lot of fan theories have been, which is, like building chips and creating new versions of consciousness for Gemma, and that Miss Casey is like one of those consciousnesses that are able to be more obedient, more submissive to Lumen. So I kind of love, honestly, that they didn't make the drama of this episode be what Cold Harbor is and have it be some surprising, totally out of left field thing. I love that the drama in this episode is character focused. It's Mark choosing to stay with Helly. That is the big thing, the big choice in this episode, the big reveal of this episode. And it's not like, oh, Cold Harbor is just some, I don't know, totally other random thing that totally shakes up what this whole operation is. So I thought that was great. And once again, not Lumen, Severance does a great job of choosing when to surprise us. And I kind of love that they didn't choose this one to surprise us too much. I think we all saw it coming, and it is indeed the case.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and after so much of this show being so, like, focused on the world building and the lumen of it all and all the weird things that happen, it's so smart for this episode to be so character focused. I feel like that was something that we were really looking for, especially in season 1, is we want these characters to be making decisions to move the plot forward. We know that the world is interesting. We know that the world is weird. We want characters making choices because that's really, really interesting to follow. And this episode has that in droves. Like everybody's making choices and all of the choices are interesting. And I love that intentionality and focus. I think was so smart.
I completely agree. I completely agree that the characters are able to really shine, and they become more complicated too. So that's great. We love to see it. I'm here to see that. Okay, other big things.
Jen, we got to talk about some goats because
We
there's some
do.
goats in this
There
episode.
there are. I'm so glad you teed me up for that. That was great.
Yeah.
I screeched and gasped with joy when the goat room was included in the previously on Severance recap. I was like, this is a good sign. We're going to get some answers. And I think this is a great example of like more questions are forming. So there's obviously some culty animal sacrifice stuff with the whole religion that is Kier and Lumen. So yeah, we and most importantly, we get to see that it triggers a very tension-inducing, adrenaline-pumping sequence with the Drum and Mark Goat Lady fight. So we talked about that one already, but yeah, goat sacrifice. That's the thing. They ain't doing goat yoga. They're doing goat sacrificing.
Maybe the goat yoga precedes the goat sacrificing,
Oh, I
like
see.
maybe that's
Yeah.
maybe that's one of the perks. You know how like companies have perks for working there? Like maybe that's a built-in perk hosted by the goat people. We could still have some goat yoga business going on.
Sure.
But I found that to be so interesting because so much of what we've seen about Lumen is like research and technology and science-y things that I don't understand. And there's so much of that there. And then we see this weird religion business kind of layered on top of that. And we see just how far the religion piece of it goes with this. Like that was so wild to me. And one of the things that Drummond says is we commit this animal to Kier in his eternal war against pain.
Yep.
And that's so fascinating to me. I need so much more on that sentence alone. And I think another piece of it that I've been kind of mulling over since finishing the episode is we learned a couple episodes ago that Harmony had created all of these like science-y things that
Hmm.
Lumen now has. And I do wonder how much of the like just plain science stuff is what kind of like hooked her into Lumen, and how much of the religion piece of it did she just go along with, or was she fully bought in? And how much did Lumen kind of take it's kind of like a chicken or the egg situation is kind of what I'm wondering. Like, when did all the religious bits come in? Did it start as some religious business and then all the sciencey stuff came in later, or did it start more as science and then just mythologizing happened over time and it kind of grew into this other thing? It's just it's so wild to me to think that both of these things coexist within this one company, seemingly in equal measure. How does that work? And how do these pieces kind of interplay with one another? And just, I mean, goat sacrifice, that's wild. Like, how did we get here in this company that's supposed to be so, like, brain science and all of this business? Like, it's just, I don't know, it's wild to think about. I never would have put those two things together.
Yeah, yeah. And the way that they seemingly are using science to fulfill this larger purpose, larger mission that they seem to have, and use that as their method of control and manipulation. I think that that's really fascinating. And instead of using just words and systems, they're using like physical forms of control, changing the very makeup of your mind to be more susceptible and able to yield, and what Cobell calls like stamping out, or what's it? What is she uses a way to describe how they like are basically removing the four tempers so that the things that cause you to rebel and desire for something else than where you are, essentially those don't exist anymore. And I think I'm thinking back to a lot of those scenes with Miss Casey to just see how she was almost this like robotic being that just was empty and numb to everything. There was no passion, desire, and spice in her because she is just a kind of like a robot or a soldier for the Lumen Corporation or for Cure. And when we remove desire, both for good things and for rebellion, we really become like shadows of ourselves. And it's fascinating to see the way that Cure seems to view that as removal of pain, because pain comes from desire. Pain comes from the desires that are unfulfilled or that were misdirected and have led to consequences, right? So if you remove desire, then I suppose maybe you remove pain, but then you just become a Miss Casey robot. And so if Severance is a show that's really meditating on and thinking about like what does it mean to be human, what defines us and makes us human, and what are all the warped and twisted ways we try to manage all of the parts that make us human, I think that there's something to be said here around the connections between desire and the cost of desire sometimes being pain, but also pain being a beautiful byproduct of things like connection and romance and friendship that are also showcased in the show too. So I think that there's just a lot here that's very rich in the text that I feel like is going to take time to even process and really flesh it all out. But it's all there and all feel very significant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's really fascinating how much they're able to pack into all of this. And, obviously we talk about all the weird things like, okay, there's a goat room, but even that, there's additional layers and meaning. And I'm excited to potentially see more of the goats in season 3. That would be lovely.
Mhm.
Can we find out more about these goat workers who are, I mean, that's just a wild thing. Your
Yeah.
whole job is to take care of the goats at Lumen.
Yeah. Like what?
Yeah.
But also she has found meaning in her work, like
Yeah.
she feels so deeply connected to these creatures that she gets to care for. And it's
Heck yeah.
it's important because she gets to take Drummond out. It's awesome.
Yeah, she does. It was so
Mm-hmm.
great. I loved
So
her.
good. So good. Okay, any other I mean, there's a million things that happen in this
There's
episode, but
so
time
many
is
other
flying.
things.
So, any other big major things that we wanted to make sure we hit on before we give out some TVNS awards for this season finale?
Okay, there's so many, but I just want to focus on two. One is at kind of the beginning of the episode, we see that conversation between Jaime and Helly.
Oh,
And
so
yeah,
creepy. Oh, terrible.
that is a
Oh,
gut punch of I do not love my daughter. Like, whoa, okay. That's
yeah.
cool. Thanks for sharing, bud. But then he goes on to talk about how he sees Kier in Helly.
The
And I
fire
found,
of Kier,
yeah,
specifically.
yeah, I found
Mm.
that to be so interesting, especially because we've seen so much in this season, the contrast between Helena and Helly, and seeing how Helena almost seems to be, I don't know that jealous is the right word, but she maybe wants to be more like Helly. She feels maybe some intrigue about Helly. And and then we see there's the added layer of her dad's disapproval for her. And so I think that that's an interesting piece of it. And then the other part of that whole conversation that I found fascinating is toward the end when because we've seen Helly, we've seen her in so many different situations. We've seen that she is a catalyst for, honestly, this whole journey that Mark goes on over the 2 seasons. Like, we see her influence in these very small groups. And I loved that moment with the marching band all playing, and she's trying to get their attention. And finally, when she is able to speak, she is able to win them all over.
Yeah.
And I loved that the beginning of the episode, Jaime is talking about how she has the fire of Kier, and we've seen her in little doses, but I love that we get to see that again toward the end, where she is able to influence everybody and she is able to get them all on her side and is able to speak to that peace in them to get them to empathize with her and Dylan and what they're trying to do. And so I love that the show tells us about that, and then we get to see some of that toward the end.
Yeah, that scene was so great because we've always known that she can move the masses and her influence is so far reaching, but to see it at this scale is really exciting. And clearly, Jaime also recognizes it too, which is so creepy, but also how will Lumen try and use Annie Helly now and wield her, for their purposes? I think that was the other thought that I was having, which is like Jaime is very much part of the powers that be, and they've recognized that there's this trait in her. So what moves are they making to either stamp that out of her or to use it to channel their goals and purposes and their plans and kind of manipulate it for their advantage? Because there's clearly a powerful force there. And when they can deceive her or guide her or dangle carrots in front of her or blackmail her, she's a powerful force. So there's something there that feels really not great that Jaime Egan recognizes that in her. So that's
Mhm.
teeing up some season 3 stuff, which is great.
Right? Yeah, it sure is. And then the other thing that I'm going to combine two things into one that I found really, really fascinating is just all the hallways and the ways that the rooms work. And so some places that we thought were hallways can be like there are doors where there shouldn't be doors necessarily. And you got people coming in from interesting places that we haven't really seen before. And so I loved that thought of like Lumen is obviously a very weird place with weird things going on, but even structurally, it doesn't follow the rules that we maybe thought that it did. And so I loved all of that, like when Mark is trying the door and then Drummond just appears behind him, seemingly have come out of the wall. Like those things are so interesting and also so terrifying. And I also loved that there was so many scenes in the hallways, and we get another Mark frantically running through the hallways scene, which is a really nice mirroring of how the season started. And so I thought all of those touches were really interesting to make Lumen seem even more mysterious, and that we have even more questions now about, okay, what is in all of these rooms and how do you get in and out of them? Because walls don't seem to work the way that walls are supposed to work when you're in Lumen.
Yeah, just kind of the dizzying maze and traps too that are created within Lumen to keep them there.
Yeah.
It's really great. One of the things that, like, from a physical space perspective, that I thought was really interesting in the way that it's just my mental model of how it's designed is just how much that the severed floor is this great barrier for keeping outies stuck in the testing floor and unable to escape. And we got to see that already in the season, but I think just feeling that again in this episode of Outie, Mark, and Gemma going down to like the bottom layer. Maybe there's more layers, but like the lowest layer going down the elevator to the testing floor. But that middle layer of the severed floor actually protects them from getting out to the outside world because they become Miss Casey and they become any Mark. And that is a powerful place where it feels like nearly impossible to ever escape because you will always hit the severed floor where you become a version of yourself where you can no longer carry out your original purposes, and that constant like running up against those like walls for your escape. It's a great protection system that they've built out, kind of genius. And I really felt that again in this episode when we get to see in the elevator Outie Mark, Outie Gemma, mid-kiss, immediately becoming Miss Casey and Any Mark. And you're like, man, once again, there was such conviction and such momentum for their escape, which we got to see in the Gemma dedicated episode. And now what will happen as they become versions of themselves that don't want to escape anymore?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Also,
genius.
so awkward.
It's like a moat.
Like,
It's like a
it
it's like
is a
a
moat.
literal moat.
It is though, and it's genius and horrifying all in one. And I think that is Lumen.
Yeah.
There's so many things where it's like, wow, that is so smart. And also, you're using all of your vast powers in the worst way possible. And it's just, wow. Lumen
Yeah.
is something else.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Shall we give out some TVNS awards?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So the first category is Employee of the Week. Who's getting this award?
I want to give it to Lorne, the goat lady, for beating up Drummond.
That was my choice too.
Drummond? Oh, yes! Drummond is
Goat
such
lady
a
taking
big
out
dude.
Drummond.
And
Yeah.
she takes him out, and I was cheering for her the whole time.
Me too. He's huge. He's
so
He's
big.
got muscle. He weighs a ton. You gotta like I was impressed. That's some great work done by Lauren.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did not think she would fare so well. I was like, oh no, she's about to die.
Hey,
when
man.
she showed up, I was like, she's gonna die.
Nah, I was like, Lorna's gonna take him out. Like, don't mess with the woman and her goats. Nope.
Move the needle moment. What's your choice?
Helly are getting the marching band on their side.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. Yeah. Her operating in her giftings.
Yes.
So good. My choice for Move the Needle moment is the accidental Drummond death in elevator. Mid-transition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great one. That definitely moved the needle for sure.
They're just immediately blood spewing post-transition.
Oh
Can you
gosh.
imagine being Outie Mark? Like
No.
you go from being like at the Ramona birthing retreat to waking up in an elevator with Drummond, man who you also don't know spewing
Yes.
blood at you.
Right. Yeah, you started the day by walking into the Lumen offices like nothing is wrong, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you're just covered in blood.
Yeah. And he handles it well. He
He
just picks
does.
up.
He does. I was impressed.
Another really funny moment is when the testing floor nurse
Oh,
comes and
yes.
they
I
just yell
loved
at
that.
each other and he like yells at her away as he just makes noises. I just was cracking up. It's like,
Well, and
that's a strategy.
right, I loved it because I really genuinely think that Mark has never been in a fight in his
No,
life, you
he has
know?
no
So, like,
idea what to do.
he doesn't know how to be violent. Like, he doesn't even know how to threaten violence, so all he can do is yell at this poor woman. Oh, it's so funny.
It's not even like a menacing roar. He's just like, la, la,
No.
la, da, da, yeah, la." And you're just like, and she scurries off too. So I'm like, well,
Mhm.
that seemed to work.
Yeah, it was very effective, so
Very
good
effective.
job, Mark.
Yeah. Would not recommend for those that are walking out late at night, though. Maybe not,
No.
maybe
Mm-mm.
less chance of success, but
Yeah.
worked for
But,
Mark. So.
on the testing floor, it's good.
Yeah, you're good. Achievement in corporatees. What is your choice?
I want to give this to the marching band leader when he says, "Fall back to CNM. Our performance has been compromised."
You're like, are we at war? Like, what's
I
going on?
loved it.
My gosh.
I was like, yes, take your marching band performance this seriously. Because honestly, they were killing it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, it was great. It was great. It's up there with Defiant Jazz. So good.
Hmm.
My choice is from Mr. Milchek. Goodly splendors await your victory. Love Mr. Milchek on the waffle pop-up card. How
Oh,
kind. How sweet.
that's so
How
good.
eloquent from our dude. Love Mr. Milchek.
Love Mr. Milchek. Yes,
Oh, he's such a gem.
he really is.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to wait a bit. But any desires for season 3? You want to see? Or are
Yeah,
you still
I think
processing
it's
this episode?
yeah, well, there's that. I think it's a lot of the things that we talked about, more Milchek and seeing what decision he's going to make. I would also love more Natalie.
Mhm.
We saw a lot of her at the beginning of this season. We haven't seen her in a while. So I'd love to see more of her and just more conversations with her and Milchek. I think would just be so delightful and juicy. So more of that, please. More Gemma, more goats as per usual. I would also love more Bert and Irving just because they are my faves, but I also understand if there's really no room for them going forward, but I would
Mm,
love more of them. And
yeah.
Radar. Bring Fields along too. He was great. I loved that dinner party. Let's do that again. So I think I would just like more time with some of these characters, but I also understand, especially for those ones, if they are not going to be important or even, I don't know,
Mm-mm.
even featured going forward. Maybe their part of the story has ended. My heart would be sad, but that's also okay.
Yeah. They were so vibrant,
Oh,
so
so
fun.
good.
You just want to see them like interact with each other
Yeah.
and collide with each other in interesting ways. So, yeah,
Yeah.
agreed. Agreed. I'm still curious about Miss Huang. Just would
Mm-hmm.
love to see more of her. I think I'm like, what is going on with her? Because she kind of plays the role that Miss Casey was playing in helping manage the severed floor. So I also wonder, like, how has Lumen messed with her mind in some way as part of their testing? She's clearly a worker for them. Is she a chip? Is she one of the consciousnesses from somebody else? There's a lot of questions there. I also wonder what any Mark and any Helly's plan next is gonna be. Just like what's their path forward for survival and getting to live a life together? Like it seems impossible and doomed, but clearly there's something that could unfold there, and what choices will they make? I think will be fun to see. I would love to see more of Gemma. Just like, let's see her team up with Devin. I think that would be incredible to see. Like a Gemma, Cobell, Devin trio would be so fun. And just to see the three of them take down Lumen would be so satisfying. What are Cobell's motivations? We still don't know yet. How is she involved in all of this? She clearly will play a pivotal role. So just excited to see more of the Cobell backstory and more answers from her because she's just really electric on screen and really fun to see. So I think just there's a lot of open threads that have been teed up in this season and we haven't seen those resolve yet. So in a lot of ways, like we've seen open threads from season 1 get answered in season 2. And so what will be those cross-seasonal threads that will get to be spun in fun new ways. So yeah, just a million and one questions. I'm particularly gonna find it fun to see where they pick up on in the timeline when we get to watch season 3, episode 1.
Yeah, which season 3 is, it has been greenlit. We are getting a season 3. We don't know when. It will be less time than it took between season 1 and season 2, but we don't know what that means. So we're going to have to wait a minute, but we will get more of this story at some point soonish.
Yeah, which will be great.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, I'm pretty satiated. I'm
Good.
full. My belly is full. I'm happy, satisfied.
Good.
How about you?
Yeah, I am still being emotionally detached from this show because I genuinely don't know where they're going or how they're going to end this. And I'm like, how can you end this show in a way that's satisfying? And I don't know, man. But it's very good. This was a very good season of TV. It was a very entertaining season of TV. So well done. I hope that this is nominated for just so many Emmys. And I hope that Tramell Tillman gets so much recognition for the incredible work that he has done as Seth Milchick, because he is incredible. And I need more people to acknowledge that. But yeah, it's just so well done. So entertaining. I am choosing to be like the severed workers and just withhold my heart from this show.
I'm
trying to avoid pain.
Self-proclaimed severance procedure done upon yourself.
Yes, just for the show, though.
I've attempted that, and I'm like Gemma inside of the room. I'm like, oh no, I'm getting invested. That hallway scene with Gemma on one side and Helly on one side, just ripped my heart out in the best way. I was so satisfied. Gladly let the show rip my heart out. It's fine. It's cool. No worries. We're good over here.
Yep. And now we get to wait and see what is going to happen next.
Yep. All right. Well, this was our review and discussion of the season finale of Severance Season 2. You can find it available to stream on Apple TV+. Thank you for listening to this episode of TV and Us. Our name sums it up. We're big fans of TV and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories, so everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today as we continued and wrapped up our journey through the second season of Severance. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune into your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review, letting us know your thoughts about this explosive season finale. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at TVNSPod, or email us at tvnspod@gmail.com. We will be back very soon with some fun TNU content of some different formats and structures for a bit. And then we'll be diving right into our next season of television that we're going to be covering next. And it's going to be a good one as well. It's one that I think a lot of y'all hopefully are also going to watch and follow along with. So we're excited about what's to come over the next couple of weeks. In the meantime, we hope you have an awesome week, and we'll talk again with you all very soon.